Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for joining us for this event today on the sustainable cold chain for people and the planet, addressing climate change, hunger, and energy. Thank you very much to everyone who are joining us virtually as well. My name is Dada. I'm the Deputy Director for the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment. And it's my pleasure to moderate this event today on the sustainable cold chain for people and planet. Let me just set the scene, just say a few words of why this theme is important in this context of
you can't hear? Can you hear?
Climate change. Oh. Can you hear us? Okay. Okay. Just checking that everyone can hear us and it looks like it's fine. Okay, thank you. So as I said, I just want to give a couple of points to set the scene of why this theme is important, and particularly in the context of COP26. The lack of effective cold chain is estimated to result in losses of about 13% of the total food production. And the food actually that is lost is responsible for about 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. And refrigeration equipment used in the food cold chain is responsible for about 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's important really that we address sustainable cold chain. And sustainable cold chain offers multifaceted win for people and the planet, and it is also very important for achieving not just the Paris Agreement, but also the Sustainable Development Goals. So at the event today, what we aim to achieve is really highlight why climate action must be sensibly included in strategies to expand and transition the sustainable cold chains to reduce emissions from food loss and increase resilience of the agri-food systems. At the same time, while also delivering on rural development, energy access, community resilience, food security, and nutrition and health. So we really hope that what you're going to hear today will inspire us and will inspire the commitment that we're looking for transformational action on sustainable cold chain at the COP26 here and beyond. So this event is organized by UNEP and the Cool Coalition and United for Efficiency and the Sustainable Energy for All. And I'm really delighted that we have with us Damilula Agombi, who's the CEO and the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All, and co-chair of UN Energy. Thank you very much for being with us. And I would like to start with you to give us opening remarks to set the scene before we move on to the panel. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here today, because this topic is just so important to us as Sustainable Energy for All. I'd first like to thank the Cool Coalition. It's been absolutely fantastic working with you, and we really see the Cool Coalition and Sustainable Energy for All as key partners. So now I'm going to go into my address. And I first want to congratulate the Coal Coalition on the release of the Global Status of Cold Chains report here today. I also want to remind everybody that it might not be obvious just the impact on cooling on our sustainable development goals, but it really is. It is the difference between us achieving Sustainable Development Goal 7 quicker or not achieving it at all, as it affects, as in right now, the COVID vaccine distribution that's currently going on in my continent, Africa. It is also vital when we look at cooling to understand just how many people it affects. It's 1 in 8 people, and we can all see from the climate change that we are working in an increasingly warming environment. So without sufficient cooling and cold chains and all these off-grid technologies, people just will not be able to benefit for things that we know the sustainable cooling brings, which is increased farming income, more jobs, better nutrition and healthcare for people, and better economic development for countries moving forward. So we have to take these important steps. And one of the biggest steps, I think, is what is happening now with the Green Climate Fund and the World Bank. You know, approval to dedicate $157 million to leverage a further $750 million towards cooling. I'm especially excited because I'm pleased that they're focusing on supporting agricultural investments in Kenya and Malawi. Another sign of progress that has happened in cooling is the national cooling action plans for countries to really understand how they're doing it. And an exemplar of that is the India plan. And then in Rwanda, you know, the announcement of the African Center of Excellence in Sustainable Cooling is also huge and, you know, particularly effective in Africa, who are really the victim of climate change, not just the cause of it. So it's important that this is being targeted. I just want to say from personal experience, the pandemic, just in my country, Nigeria, has been quite tough because there are some vaccines that you know are automatically going to be wasted because you don't have the cold chains to actually support people. So we talk about vaccines not being distributed equitably, but we don't talk about all the waste when it's actually being distributed. And the only way to solve that is sustainable cooling. In September, we, as part of the UN high-level dialogue, about the UN General Assembly, had a high-level dialogue on energy. And one of the key outcomes of that were energy compacts and getting countries and multi-stakeholders to actually commit to what they're going to do towards energy compacts. Really pleased that the Cool Coalition actually came up with the compact, but we need more people to come up and say, what are you going to do towards cooling for us to achieve SDG 7? We should all know by now that if we do not achieve SDG 7 by 2030, we can forget about all the climate goals of net zero that we've set here today. So again, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to working with all of you post-COP on how we translate all these great reports to actually actions on ground. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Tamilula, and thank you for your leadership in this area. It's interesting if mentioning, you know, some important facts there, but that cooling affects 1 in 8 people. And I'm very pleased to hear what you mentioned about mobilization of resources from GCF and GEF also in addressing the cooling and the importance of national cooling action plans really to make this happen. And we'll hear about the Rwanda Center of Excellence for Cooling shortly, but thank you very much for setting the scene. We're really looking forward to working with you and making the energy compacts actually happen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Being with us. Let me invite our 2 panelists now to join me. So perhaps we'll just change the seating so that we're all comfortable. So if you could join me, please. Jurgen Fischer, who's the president of Danfoss Cooling, and Herman Hakuzimana, who's from the Rwanda Environment Management Authority. We're hoping that a colleague from the French government will join us also, at least to help us balance the gender issue. So hopefully she'll join us if she's available shortly. But thank you both for joining us. So you heard the introduction from Damilola in setting, you know, the scene. If I start with you, Jurgen, you know, your company is advocating for net zero climate impact technologies and volunteering as a champion for climate action in the cooling sector through your involvement in the Cool Coalition in particular. So can you just tell us why are cold chains so important to ensure reaching net zero, and which cutting-edge technologies and services are actually critical to this decarbonization process? In 3 minutes, please. So
I try to do my best.
Right and left.
But first of all, you mentioned it in the entrance speech. Food loss is emitting as much as China in indirect CO2 emissions, like a very, very big country. 30% is wasted. And if we don't fix that, right, we need to produce so much food, we need to deforest more, We need a lot of water to grow the food, so I think it's of utmost importance that we save the food from farm or from fish to fork, because most of the food in developing countries is wasted close to the production, close to the harvesting, and in developed countries, by the way, most of the food is wasted in our fridge, right? That's another aspect. Another important one is that when you cool, you need refrigerants. And refrigerants are a little bit in discussion at the moment, especially chemical refrigerants. So we need to do that in a sustainable way. So we need to use as much as possible natural refrigerants in the future, and at the same time reduce the energy consumption to run these machines. Because as a matter of fact, if you use natural refrigerants, you need more energy than using chemical refrigerants, right? There's a little bit of a trade-off you have to do. That means we need to educate people to build sustainable cold chain equipment. We need to educate them to run it, to service it, and that's especially a challenge as we have less and less craftsmen in the developed world. And in Africa, for example, I think we need to invest a lot of time, money, to educate people, as we have heard from the African Center of Excellence. Mm-hmm. Maybe a last point, and at the end, as a service is very important. So you find that in all the plans, in the EU 55 plan, in the China plan, that refrigeration as a service is recommended by many organizations. So some professional people running it instead of having it run by people who need to be educated, who may not run it the best performing way.
Thank you. That's a good point. So let me bring in, because you mentioned the Africa Center of Excellence on Sustainable Cooling and Cold Chain. Yes. And Herman, if you could just tell us, why have you decided to champion this center as a permanent Pan-African center rather than a Rwanda-focused project, and which immediate opportunities are available for new collaboration with the center?
Thank you very much, moderator, for a very good question. As he mentioned, we all know that lack of effective cold chain is estimated to directly result in more than 400 tons, 400 million tons, or 13% of the total food production loss. And then we also know that from there, also the global food loss and the waste generated annually is around generate around 4.4 gigaton of CO2 equivalent, which contribute to around 80% of the emissions. This is very huge. But apart from this, also we know that at the same times, specifically for Africa, Africa farmers are losing between 30 and 50% of their food produced on their efforts. So those fragmented farms, lack of access to food aggregation points, as well as lack of effective and integrated physical post-harvest management and market connectivity through comprehensive cold chain are the main challenges. Many challenges in Africa, including also Rwanda. And basing on all those challenges, Rwanda decided to take a lead and entering this initiative to have the center to help ourselves, but also to help our Africa. Mainly those are the reasons.
That's really very important, very strategic in terms of, as I said, having the center works not just for Rwanda, but really across the continent.
Yeah.
So obviously that's going to facilitate collaboration, particularly in research and development, as well as, I guess, investment, capacity building. Mm-hmm. So Jurgen, just come back to you on this issue of collaboration and building of capacity building. So how is Danfoss then partnering with other organizations to empower the next generation of technicians and users to ensure sustainable technologies can hit the ground running in different markets?
Yeah, basically we do what we always have been doing in the past. I mean, Danfoss has been doing that 50 years ago with less sustainable technologies, of course. So we built a lot of cold chains in Latin America in the 1940s, 1950s. And we're still doing the same. So we are also participating in the African Center of Excellence, right, in that organization committee. We have been training banana farmers in India how not to waste their bananas, because from eating themselves, from selling them on markets, is a big difference moving them into a cold chain, transportation afterwards. So we have been educating them. And in Brazil, I think we are for many years now cooperating with universities in school to educate trainees. And I think thousands of trainees in Brazil in the past have been learning how to do refrigeration from our training activities. Finally, we are also part of the global of the GFCCC, yeah, where we are trying to collect data about the cold chain, because one of the biggest problems is that there is no good data about energy consumption, waste in cold chains, and we have just started a study together with GFCCC, and we are advocating for professional cold chain development. Another thing we did in the past, we have produced containers, training containers for CO2 refrigeration, which we are sending around. Yes. And everywhere in the world, right? People can, in South Africa, somewhere else in Africa, in Europe, in India, we are shipping these containers, and then we can educate people on site with real equipment, because CO2 is a rather complicated refrigerant. It has much higher pressure, and you need to understand what you're doing. Otherwise you have an accident, then you achieve the opposite. So in other words, we are continuing what we have been doing for decades.
Okay, thank you. I just wonder if we have a microphone, if someone from the audience want to ask a question or make a comment, that would be welcome, so we can have an interactive discussion with colleagues joining us live here. If anyone wants to ask any question or make a comment, you can think about it while I'm asking more questions, but you're welcome to join us and ask questions to the panelists. So let me build on what you said, Jurgen, and come back to you, Herman. You mentioned really some important points, particularly on the loss between 30 and 50%, food from farmers. I mean, that's huge, and that also highlights the benefit, obviously, of the cold chain and the whole purpose, of the topic we're talking about.
Yes.
So, what is your message then for countries and research organizations and companies and others on what to do really to walk the talk and start similar effort to the center that you built? Because as you said, this covers Africa.
Yes.
But obviously there's a huge potential, as Jurgen also was saying, to go really much beyond that. So do you have any particular lessons that you've learned, anything you would like to convey for this technology actually to be expanded across the board?
Yes, thank you very much for a good question. Yes, as you mentioned, we learned a lot in the system, in the initiative, and we invite even other countries to join the collaboration, as he mentioned. As the center is a collaborative initiative that cuts across government, academic, industry, and the community, this it offers plenty of immediate opportunities to the new collaborators, and we encourage Africa countries mainly to join and partner with us. We encourage to scale up through the demonstration, the laboratories in different countries, so that we can join the efforts and put together our means to overcome all those challenges that we mentioned. There are even other challenges that we didn't talk about. Like, for example, we are in the period of COVID. All countries are running to conduct the vaccination of the population. There is no country which can run the vaccination program without effective and efficient cooling system. So we invite all partners, academic, industries, NGOs, it's our problem. This is those challenges we face them, all of us, in one or another way. So let's cooperate, let's collaborate, and put together the efforts to overcome our challenges and support our sustainable development. Because in most of our countries, agriculture is the pillar of the economy. So if we lose around 50% of our production, it's no longer productive. It's no longer contributing to as it could to the economy. So the message that I can give is to invite everyone to join.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. I mean, you highlighted there, the multiple benefits, obviously, of the center.
Yes.
The health aspect, particularly, it's really timely to have that capacity, not just in Rwanda, but across the continent. That's why really the potential is to expand this initiative for other countries to benefit from, and also across the board. Might come back to you on that point to expand on the multiple benefits, especially, and to focus on agriculture as well.
Yes.
But let me just come back again to the audience if anyone has a question.
Do you have someone in this? Right. Hiya. I'm Sophie from the Environmental Investigation Agency. Jurgen, you mentioned the refrigerant angle of the cold chain. Obviously, where I work, that's a huge part of what we do to kind of raise awareness of that. There is very little awareness of the refrigerant gases in these cold chains. And as we know, with the vaccine rollout and also to combat food waste, there's going to be sorry.
Maybe you come a bit closer.
Sorry. But yeah, for the vaccine rollout and to address food waste, there's going to be a huge build-out of cold chain. How do we ensure that that is natural refrigerants and not climate-damaging HFCs or environmentally damaging HFOs? How, from like a policy standpoint, can we encourage nat refs only?
Yeah, I mean, of course, as a company, we are not making policy, right? We are cooperating with each and everybody to use the most sustainable technology, which is a good combination of energy consumption and efficiency. And that is not always CO2, right? Because if you then have, for example, a solar-powered unit, and you need to double as much as energy to cool down, it may be better to use an HFC which has a low GWP and take care that there is no leak, because then you are back to the training of the people, then you are back to prefabricated units, which you do in factories, instead of mounting them outside and losing all the refrigerants. I think the truth is somewhere in between. I think it would be great to have CO2-based refrigeration everywhere in the world, but I think at the moment we are far away from that, right? And we have so many fake products going on. We have so many people who are assembling stuff somewhere out there and exploding compressors. So we really have to train the people to use technology. And I agree with you, it would be ideal to have CO2-based only at one point in time, or let me say natural refrigerant-based only. Could also be ammonia, which is not less dangerous. But at the moment I think it's most important that we get rid rid of the R22 and the old refrigerants which have a couple of thousand GWP, and not kill the ones which have 130 or 150. So I think we have to go down a path following our F-gas directive we are doing in the EU. We are doing our utmost, as I have said. We are sending out containers where we train people in real life containers on CO2 refrigeration, because you need to put it into a container and then you ship that, because the installation is safety relevant, right? You cannot just send components and ask somebody to do a CO2 lab. This has to be built, it has to be ATEX proof, so it's rather complicated. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And this issue of technology is being promoted under the Kigali Amendment to the Kyoto Protocol, and it has really helped in bringing these efficient technologies on board, particularly for refrigeration, to address the CFC's issue. So it's a climate change issue, but it's also a technology one. But thank you for the question. Any other points? Any other questions? Okay, I might come back to you if you have another question in the next 5 minutes or so. Jurgen, let me pick up on what you said. It is also the importance of data, really.
Yeah.
To make sure that the technology is enhanced and expanded as well across the board. But this also highlights the fact that the cold chain are really complex systems, and with many stakeholders being involved, from the food industry, transport, and also technology companies, as you mentioned. And data on cold chain in particular is really lacking. We don't have a lot of data in this, and making it hard to identify priority areas and also what works and what doesn't. So my question to you is, how can then your organization, or having a private, public and international collaboration, help in identifying and advocating for effective solutions that can help us use the data effectively and make this change happen?
Yes. I mean, first of all, we have to be interested in it, right? Data is key. We can also use it as a company for our development activities to develop even more efficient components and equipment. I give you an example: sustainable cooling for all, where you just had the chairman before here, or the CEO. There was a subset, sustainable refrigeration, right? Because in the beginning we had a report on sustainable air conditioning, but nobody was thinking about sustainable refrigeration. So we had to do a lot of base work to get this white paper together, which was, in my opinion, a first one to get a good overview on sustainable refrigeration. We are in the GFCCC supporting and driving an analysis and a study, basically globally, to collect these data. And we are cooperating with other associations, NGOs, other companies, because we are sitting in the same boat, right? My peers, you can also say competitors, our customers, like Carrier as an example, right? We all want to have the same data, because at the end we are producing the equipment for the cold chain. And then we spend a lot of time to educate people, because the best equipment is useless if it's not used the right way. And at the end, it's a business. And back to your point in Africa, right? You have to make the cold chain a business for people. If people can earn their money by taking care of a sustainable cold chain, as mechanicians, as manufacturing, I will also say that in the future you will have much more manufacturing in Africa, because there is a lot of sunshine, right? You have solar energy. Yes. In many other countries you are not having so low carbon energy to produce. So I forecast that in the future you will have more there. And last but not least, I think we need to develop new business models. Refrigeration as a service is one of my hottest topics, because when we look at how refrigeration equipment is being run, we see a big loss of efficiency. We also see a big loss of refrigerant when it's not run properly. And the more you professionalize that by having startups, companies doing refrigeration as a service and sell it, for example, to a supermarket company, to a farmer, and say, here is your cold room. It costs you, I don't know, $5 per day, right? Instead of please install a cold room. I believe that is much, much, much better, because then you have professionals running it with all the efficiency gains and safety gains.
No, thank you for highlighting that, and obviously the United for Efficiency Initiative, which was also co-hosting this event, they're very active in efficiency, promoting energy efficiency in refrigeration, in electric motors and air conditioning and others. So obviously the energy efficiency is very much an important component of sustainable cold chain. Herman, let me just come back what you said earlier about the capacity, building the capacity. You mentioned, the importance of training, and
Yes.
you want, many organizations to join. But as Jurgen said, you need to have the training, the capacity really to be able to use the technology. I wonder if you want to comment on the importance of that and anything that the center is doing in terms of having training programs in this area.
Yes, thank you very much. As part of the training and the capacity building, it started already, but alongside those the study tour training that are organized, and they continue the capacity building across the country to different levels, and also continue the professional development, include courses, including masters and PhDs. This initiative will build the capacity of many people from different levels to be able, as you mentioned, you may have all the materials in place, all the equipment in place, but not using them. The capacity building component is very important, and we have there will be many opportunities to understand also as we are implementing, to understand the capacity, the gaps, to identify the gaps available, and set also the plan to fill them through those capacity building of all stakeholders involved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if there is another question or comment before we close. So you're welcome to make a question or a comment. Actually, I see that there isn't any. That's fine. But let me come back to you, Jurgen and Herman, for a final word. Just one final message you want to leave everyone with. From everything you said, just one final thing that you really want people to remember from this event.
Yeah. If I may start, I think there is a lot of technology topics here, but I think the real one is the people part. We need to find and attract people. By the way, diversity is also a factor. Many technicians, or only few technicians, are female. Right? So I think we really have to work hard to make this industry and the cold chain an interesting place to work and to develop and to engineer. And I think we have to spend a lot of time and money to get people into our industry, because without good people, we cannot build a sustainable, good cold chain.
Thank you. And that's linked to the skills issue and the training that Herman was talking about. Herman?
Thank you very much. What I can add is that this initiative will help countries to meet their national development targets, because it can be applied in different domains of the economy, and it can also help to fulfill. You mentioned Kigali Amendment. It can also help countries to fulfill their obligation toward Kigali Amendments, to Montreal Protocol, and also from there I would like to invite countries and different partners to join this changing initiative, to work together to advance our sustainable development and resilient Africa.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was really helpful to hear from both of you and from Demilula as well on the importance of sustainable cold chain. I think this is just the start of a journey that looks very promising, And you all highlighted so many co-benefits actually. It's not just climate change, but sustainability and health issues, as you mentioned, with the relation to storage of vaccines as well, and not just food. And the huge potential really in cutting food loss in particular, because we know that is a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, about 8%. So this is really very encouraging, and I really hope that this conversation will continue, and I'm sure it will,
Yes.
in other settings. So let me thank everyone who joined us here in person, and also colleagues who joined us live. And let me thank colleagues who helped us organize this event and make it happen, particularly Ben Hartley, thanks very much, and Sophie Loran, also who's been behind the scene, and Michael Funch, who's doing also the technical support. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.